TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, the Islamic Republic of Iran has warned the United States against violating its borders, vowing such a move would lead to a stronger reaction than the previous claim of violation a week ago when the Revolutionary Guards downed an American unmanned aerial reconnaissance vehicle. The United States is making headway in tightening the noose around Tehran's neck as efforts to assuring global compliance with the American-imposed sanctions regime, as well as efforts to form an international coalition against the Islamic Republic, appears to bear fruit. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says that Moscow will try to persuade Washington and Tehran to resolve their differences by means of a civilized dialogue, despite the latter's continued refusal to consider any form of negotiations with the United States. The Islamic Republic of Iran has warned the United States against violating its borders, vowing such a move would lead to a stronger reaction than the alleged violation a week ago when the Revolutionary Guards downed an American unmanned aerial reconnaissance vehicle. The Iranian threat was made by Iran's parliament speaker Ali Larijani, who declared in an interview with his country's semi-official Tasnim news agency that the downing of the American drone was a good experience for the Americans to avoid any aggression, while further underscoring that Tehran's reaction will be stronger if they repeat their mistake of violating Iran's borders. Meanwhile, the United States is making headway in tightening the noose around Tehran's neck, as efforts to assuring global compliance with the American-imposed sanctions regime, as well as efforts to form an international coalition against the Islamic Republic, appears to bear fruit. Among others, the United States managed to convince India, which has been the second largest oil import from the Islamic Republic after China, to comply with Washington's energy-related sanctions against Tehran. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who concluded an official visit to New Delhi today, hailed the Indian government for making hard choices as part of the multilateral efforts to force the Ayatollah regime to behave like a normal country. Following a meeting with Indian Foreign Ministers Subramanyam Jaishankar, the two top diplomats underscored a better shared understanding with regard to their respective interests and concerns.
I mean, we have a certain perspective on Iran, obviously, from where we are based, and the Secretary shared with me the American concerns on Iran. I would say, frankly, I guess both of us certainly came out much better informed of each other's concerns in that regard. In terms of common ground, though I used it for trade, we have common ground on energy as well. I mean, for us, it is important that any global energy supplies remain predictable, that they remain affordable. And I think that's a concern to which Secretary Pompeo was certainly very, very receptive. I think he understands that this is today the world's fifth largest economy, which imports 85% of its energy, a large part of it from the Gulf. So I think he certainly gets, I guess I'm speaking for him, but I think looking at his face, he certainly gets what our interests are.
Secretary Pompeo, for his part, underlined a common understanding on assuring freedom and security for maritime navigation in the area of the Strait of Hormuz, while indicating that there is a shared understanding also regarding the threat that Iran poses to the entire world.
We all know that we need to keep that waterway open for the reasons that were just described. We also know that Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terror. And we know the Indian people, they have suffered from terror around the world. So I think there's a shared understanding of threat and a common purpose to ensure that we can keep energy at the right prices and deter this threat. Not only the threat in the narrow confines of the Middle East, but the threat that this terror regime poses to the entire world.
The top American diplomat further insisted that the United States will guarantee support for India's ever-growing energy demand, as well as a joint effort to improve trade ties in the midst of unresolved differences. It is important to know that India, the world's third biggest oil import, bought about 184,000 oil barrels per day from the United States between November of 2018 and May 2019, compared with about 40,000 in the same period of the preceding year. Now to the Japanese capital, Tokyo, where Prime Minister Shinzo Abe held a meeting with visiting French President Emmanuel Macron ahead of the G20 summit, which is scheduled to start tomorrow in the city of Osaka for the first time in history. In a joint press conference that followed their meeting, Prime Minister Abe stressed that his country will work closely with France in alleviating tensions in the Middle East amid a brewing confrontation between Iran and the United States. As part of these efforts, both leaders underlined the importance of working to secure safety for maritime navigation, which, according to Abe, it is beneficial for the world's peace and prosperity. It is important to know that one of the two oil tankers that was targeted in the Gulf of Oman earlier this month was a Japanese-owned vessel. While the United States attributed full responsibility for the attack on the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Ayatollah regime continues to dismiss any involvement. Meanwhile, in Russia, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow will try to persuade Washington and Tehran to resolve their differences by means of a civilized dialogue, despite the latter's continued refusal to consider any form of negotiations with the United States in particular and the West in general.
Не бывает точек невозврата, хотя некоторым, наверное, хотелось бы такие точки создать. Но мы будем убеждать и наших иранских коллег, и американских коллег в том, что надо отойти от этой опасной черты, начать регулировать противоречия через цивилизованный диалог. Конечно же, это предполагает прекращение политики ультиматумов, санкций и шантажа.
Despite the calls by Moscow's top diplomat, the Ayatollah regime continues to insist that it is the victim of the entire ordeal. At a meeting of the UN Security Council in New York, Tehran's ambassador to the world body emphasized that entering into a meaningful dialogue remained intangible due to the lack of genuine trust.
True trust is the main prerequisite and the minimum requirement of entering into a meaningful dialogue. This can only be represented in deeds, not deceptive and sugar-coated words. As long as illegal sanctions are in place, one cannot be expected to trust the offer of an honest and genuine dialogue.
The Iranian diplomat also took the opportunity to announce that his country will no longer accept the burden of preserving the 2015 multilateral nuclear agreement.
In practical terms, the JCPOA has become an agreement which is being respected only by one party. A multilateral agreement cannot be implemented unilaterally. Iran has done a lot and much more than its fair share to preserve the nuclear deal. Iran alone cannot, shall not, and will not take all of the burdens anymore to preserve the JCPOA.
While the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which is the technical term for the nuclear agreement, is evidently on the verge of collapse, Ambassador Ravanchi insisted that it was time for the agreement's European parties to make their final decision. Meanwhile, in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump insisted that time remained for Iran to make the right choice of returning to the negotiating table. The American leader, who underlined Washington's hope for dialogue, emphasized that the decision, which the Ayatollah regime will make, will reveal its true nature toward its own peoples.
Iran can do whatever they want. It's just fine. I have plenty of time. But they have a country that's in economic distress. It's an economic disaster right now. They could solve it quickly or they can solve it in 10 years from now. Whatever they want is fine with me. Whatever they want. I have all the time in the world. I'm sitting here, I have all the time in the world. In the meantime, they have very strong sanctions. They have to live with those sanctions, but Iran should do the right thing for their people. The problem is, I don't believe their leader, I'm not sure that their leaders care for their people. If they do, they'll make a deal. If they don't, they're just thinking about themselves. And they're selfish and they're stupid if that's what they're doing.
Thank you for watching us. Keep praying for the peace of Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hassan. Have an Erev Tov, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.
Hi, this is Mayan Hassan from TV7 Israel News. Like our videos? Support our cause? Enjoy learning more about the region? Want constant updates about the Middle East? Then subscribe to the TV7 Israel News YouTube channel. Make sure to also turn on the notification bell with just one simple click of a button. After subscribing to our channel, a bell icon will appear under every one of our videos. You will find the notification bell right next to the subscribe button, and all you have to do is click on the bell icon, and make sure small sound bars appear above it. This way, you'll be alerted every time we upload a new video, and thus will never miss a thing. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.